You might find it hard to believe, but one of the most disliked boxers of our generation tried to repair his reputation, and somehow ended up making it even worse. Surprisingly, it wasn't that long ago that Ben Whittaker was actually a fan favorite, thanks to his entertaining antics inside the ring. Whittaker's immense confidence as a professional boxer came from his long and successful amateur career, during which he collected numerous victories and even won a silver medal at the Olympics. However, to truly understand Ben's ambition, you need to know that he actually cried when he received that silver medal, because for him, only gold was good enough. Yet, instead of waiting for another Olympic cycle, he decided to turn professional right away. He quickly built a name for himself with flashy performances against opponents who were clearly far below his level. It's important to note a crucial point here. Boxing has followed a strict hierarchy for more than a century. At the top are the stars of the sport, then come the regular fighters, and at the very bottom are the journeymen. This is the ecosystem of professional boxing, a structure where everyone has a role and supports one another. A superstar doesn't just sustain themselves. They support promoters, the regular boxers they face, and even the fighters who appear on their undercards. But before anyone can even reach the level of a regular professional boxer, they need one crucial thing: experience. And that's exactly where journeymen come in. Journeymen are fighters whose role is to help rising prospects look impressive and gain valuable time in the ring. They step into fights for the paycheck, not with the expectation of victory. There's no need for bribery or shady deals. Everyone understands that journeymen have a lower skill level. They accept that reality because they need the money, and they willingly take fights where the odds are overwhelmingly against them. This system has existed in boxing for generations, and everyone involved accepts their place within it. Without any single part of this structure, the entire ecosystem would fall apart. That's why even entertainers like Roy Jones Jr. never disrespected or mocked journeymen. Everyone already knew Jones was going to win. His job was simply to use those fights to build confidence and grow comfortable in the professional boxing environment. Roy Jones Jr. reserved his showboating for truly serious opponents, like former world champion James Toney. And mocking someone like Toney was never about humiliating him. It was about demonstrating Roy's extraordinary skill level. To clown around in the ring against a fighter of James Toney's caliber, you have to be exceptionally talented. However, based on what you're about to see, it seems Ben Whittaker either has no understanding of boxing etiquette, or he simply doesn't care and chooses to ignore it for his own benefit. The intense hype surrounding Whittaker came to a screeching halt when he faced the relatively unremarkable Liam Cameron, an opponent carefully handpicked so that Ben could dominate and showboat at his expense. Yet things didn't go according to plan at all. Let's quickly recap what happened in their first encounter before we move on to the rematch, a fight that may have permanently damaged Whittaker's career. On the undercard of the Dmitry Bivol vs. Artur Beterbiev event, Ben Whittaker defended his IBF International Light Heavyweight title against Liam Cameron. Despite Cameron's modest 23-6 record, he turned out to be a far tougher opponent than anyone had expected. Cameron was far more experienced than any of Whittaker's previous challengers, having competed for several minor titles, even though he had managed to win only one. For Ben Whittaker, this was considered a logical step up in competition, and most people expected him to handle it with ease. As soon as the opening bell rang, Liam Cameron came forward aggressively, launching a jab right away. But Whittaker quickly asserted control over the center of the ring. He began measuring distance with his lead hand, yet Cameron refused to let him settle, swatting Ben's hand down and following up with a couple of stiff jabs. In response, Whittaker started firing long jabs of his own and once again pressured Cameron back toward the ropes. He then used one of his signature tactics, a quick light jab designed to bait his opponent into countering. As soon as Cameron reacted, Ben pulled back and landed a sharp, powerful jab in return. Feeling confident, Whittaker attempted one of his trademark body shots, a left hook to the midsection thrown without any setup. Cameron tried to counter with a jab but missed, forcing Ben to step back. However, it's worth noting how Whittaker retreated, first pulling his head backward, followed by his feet. This habit would go on to cause problems for him later in the fight. As the rounds progressed, Cameron tried to close the distance by throwing a sloppy left hook, but Whittaker smoothly pivoted away, positioning his opponent with his back against the ropes. Both fighters exchanged jabs in the moments that followed. Whittaker then showcased one of his signature visual tricks. He unleashed a flurry of straight punches aimed at Cameron's guard, finishing the sequence with a hook to the body. These punches didn't inflict any real damage, but they created the impression that Ben was launching a relentless attack. Even legendary boxers like Sugar Ray Leonard used similar tactics to excite the crowd and score points. A wild overhand punch from Cameron forced Whittaker to quickly evade. Immediately afterward, Cameron threw another overhand with his rear hand. This time, Ben tried to slip the shot but ended up getting caught. Cameron closed the distance and landed a solid left hook, capitalizing on Whittaker's habit of pulling back instead of blocking. Cameron then charged in with yet another overhand. But Ben read it early and pivoted out of danger, just as he had done earlier in the round. Whittaker resumed measuring distance with his lead hand and then dipped his body as if he were about to attack to the body. Cameron quickly picked up on the feint, realizing that Ben was setting up for an uppercut, either to the body or the head. Anticipating it, Cameron responded with a strong overhand, which Whittaker tried to dodge at the last second. This time, however, Ben extended his lead hand to block the incoming punch and immediately countered with a quick 1-2 combination aimed at Cameron's guard. Liam attempted to fire back with a jab, but missed, prompting Whittaker to lean back and pull his head out of range. Ben then began showing off with flashy head movement, slipping imaginary punches and throwing shots at Cameron's guard. While the display looked impressive, it served little purpose other than draining his cardio. Before Cameron even launched his next attack, he noticed that Whittaker was actively searching for opportunities to pull back and slip. Seizing the moment, Liam threw a light overhand followed by an uppercut. He then faked another overhand, planning to bait Ben into slipping so he could counter with a hook. The plan worked. Whittaker's hook swung through empty air. As the round came to a close, Cameron threw a jab, which Ben ducked under to initiate a clinch. This led to one final exchange. Whittaker landed a jab to both the head and body, while Cameron responded with a body jab of his own. Ben prepared to slip and counter, but instead ended up getting caught with a clean shot. Round 2 began with relentless pressure from Liam Cameron, who showed absolutely no fear of Whittaker. He used his jab to chase Ben all around the ring, cutting off angles and keeping him on the defensive. Whittaker tried to respond, but most of his punches were simply jabs that landed on Cameron's guard. Cameron faked a forward step, and Ben fell for it. He did it 2 more times, frustrating Whittaker to the point that Ben began punching at empty air. Sensing an opening, Cameron threw a jab as Whittaker shifted his stance. Ben didn't raise his guard and attempted to slip from an awkward position, but he mistimed it and ended up pinned against the ropes, where Liam unleashed a combination of punches. In the clinch, a nervous Whittaker tried to smile and whisper something to his opponent, but Cameron responded with a stiff overhand punch. By the middle of the second round, Liam had completely figured out Whittaker's timing. He blocked Ben's jab and immediately countered with a hook. And now, the punch looked even faster because Cameron knew the exact moment to throw it. Whittaker once again fired straight punches into Cameron's guard. But this time, notice the difference. When Liam countered with his jab, Ben's head snapped back and he was forced to pivot away. Not only was he taking unnecessary damage, but he was also wasting precious energy with needless movements. Cameron threw another jab, which Ben dodged using upper body movement, then predictably tried to duck underneath. But Liam had seen this pattern too many times by now and caught him with a perfectly timed uppercut. At this point, even a blind man could tell that Ben Whittaker was preparing to pull back and counter with a straight punch. Cameron, of course, noticed too and landed a light jab to Ben's body, which made Whittaker lose his composure. Ben quickly pulled back, fired a straight punch into thin air, and was punished with a shot to the back of the head. Whittaker then dipped low to suggest a body shot was coming, only to pop up with a hook. But Liam read it perfectly and blocked. Cameron fired back with a sharp 1-2 combination, landing both punches cleanly despite Whittaker's attempts to slip and evade. Liam then launched a sloppy 1-2 of his own. Instead of capitalizing on the moment, Whittaker began dancing and then retreated back toward the ropes. Round 3 saw Cameron growing even more confident. He doubled up on his jab, which Whittaker dodged with exaggerated movements, almost as if he were suffering from dizziness, leaving himself completely exposed for an overhand that landed squarely on his head. Liam quickly rushed in with 2 hooks, and once again, Ben tried to slip away by pulling back. This sequence highlighted one of Whittaker's biggest technical flaws. Rather than using his legs first and then his upper body to evade punches, as proper footwork dictates, he consistently relied on head and torso movement alone. This bad habit often left him in dangerous positions, with his head dangerously close to the ropes, while his feet remained planted in the middle of the ring. It's a fundamental beginner-level mistake that Whittaker seems to repeat in every fight. By this point, it was obvious that all the unnecessary head movement and wasted motion had drained Ben's stamina. He began backpedaling around the ring, clearly tiring. Cameron feinted a body shot, then followed up with an overhand to the head and an uppercut, rattling Whittaker. In response, Ben threw a... Whittaker fired off a combination that bounced harmlessly off Cameron's guard before tying him up in a clinch, one that left Ben in a rather awkward, compromising position. How would you describe it? Let us know in the comments. By round 4, Whittaker's credibility had deteriorated so badly that Cameron began openly mocking him, even taunting him by sticking out his tongue in the middle of the fight. Immediately after the showboating, Liam confidently landed a clean, straight punch, followed by a heavy overhand and a hook to the body. And just when Ben thought the assault was over, Cameron added another punishing overhand for good measure. With every passing minute, Liam's respect for Whittaker diminished further. A single overhand shook Ben's head violently, and by the end of the round, Cameron was landing multi-punch combinations with ease. Ben tried to smile and fire back, but his movements were breaking down. Corner suddenly claimed to have suffered a serious leg injury. Naturally, you'd assume that if a fighter can't continue, the result would be a TKO victory for his opponent. At the very least, given the unusual circumstances of the fall, the fight could have been ruled a no contest. But we can't forget one crucial detail. The promoters had big plans for Ben Whittaker. For the first time in boxing history, despite the fight reaching the 5th round, the organizers made an unprecedented decision. They chose to count only the first 4 rounds and announced a draw based on the judges' scorecards. The reason was obvious. They needed to salvage Ben Whittaker's career. A technical knockout loss would have been disastrous, so they conveniently ignored the 5th round entirely. Whittaker had performed so poorly in that round that no one would have believed any result other than a loss. By scoring only the first 4 rounds, where the only one that could even arguably be given to Ben was the first, they created a scenario in which a draw became possible. Because the number of scored rounds was now even, they used that as justification to call the fight a draw. In doing so, the organizers, judges, and even the referee all did everything they could to protect Ben Whittaker's reputation. The rematch didn't happen immediately. Press conference before the rematch. Eventually, the fight was booked again, and it was clear from the start that this was more about brand repair than genuine competition. The primary goal was to rehabilitate Ben Whittaker's image, to convince fans that he hadn't quit the first fight because he was afraid of losing, but rather because he supposedly suffered a leg injury. They also wanted to show that Ben might... The plan was to present Ben Whittaker as a flashy showman inside the ring, a clown dancer knockout artist, but a humble, down-to-earth person outside of it. Apparently, no one explained that strategy to Ben himself, because at the press conference he appeared extremely arrogant, cocky, and completely detached from reality. He dismissed the first fight as insignificant, saying, "Like I said, after I win, I move on. It's just another fight. I think he's more emotionally attached to it than I am. He turned up at his best, I turned up at my worst, and he still couldn't really do much." Ben continued with more self-assured remarks, adding, "The highlight of the fight? No, a week before the fight. That's the amazing part. I hope he's better now. And yeah, you noticed it. Because every time I speak, everyone wants to butt in. I'll let you have your say. But just sit back and relax, man. Returning to his talking points, he repeated, "At the end of the day, he turned up at his best. That's the point. He turned up at his best, I turned up at my worst. And it looked like two kids stumbling out of Weatherspoons drunk, swinging punches. That's all it was. When I show up on April 20th, listen, I wish him all the best. It's nothing personal. I've gained a lot from this. A new career, new airline, new sponsors. I'm buzzing. I'm living life. Look at me. Look at me now. It should be Cameron versus Whittaker. But yeah, thank you to everyone who supported me. It means the world. This negative, dismissive energy carried over into fight night itself. And it's important to remember, this wasn't even a title fight. There were no belts on the line. The entire event existed for one reason only, to repair Ben Whittaker's reputation. But the crowd wasn't buying what the promoters were selling. From the very moment Whittaker walked into the arena, a chorus of boos rained down on him, and the boos didn't stop, not for a single moment. In fact, they grew even louder as the fight went on. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because this night was about far more than just two boxers stepping into the ring. It was Liam Cameron versus Ben Whittaker and the referee. For Cameron to win this fight, he had to box perfectly. He couldn't afford to take even a single clean shot. Whittaker, on the other hand, had the luxury of knowing the referee was ready to step in, even physically, to protect him if things got rough. From the opening bell, both fighters engaged in a battle of jabs, but their approaches couldn't have been more different. Whittaker relied on hand speed and timing, while Cameron focused on pure technique, consistently angling off as he threw. The result? Whittaker kept walking into clean, crisp jabs to the head. Desperate to land something significant, Whittaker tried mixing things up, feinting a jab to the body before shooting one upstairs, or stabbing a straight into the midsection and then coming back over the top. All of it was aimed at creating an opening for just one clean shot. But Cameron wasn't biting. He blocked everything behind a tight, disciplined high guard. By around the 2/16